Hello and welcome to the UKSIF Leadership Podcast and our very exciting 12 days of UKSIF-mas series, where we are spending 12 days breaking down what we've been working on, big moves and big news in the sustainable finance sector. I'm Sally and I'm joined today by Oscar for day 4, where we will be covering 4 SDR fund labels. Oscar, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Sally. Thanks for having me.
So, as listeners will undoubtedly know, SDR has been taking up a huge amount of responsible investment team capacity this year, with the policy paper launched in November last year, applications being submitted since July of this year, and the naming and marketing rules having been applied from just a few days ago on the 2nd of December. Oscar is our head of policy and regulatory affairs here at UKSIF and has spent all year sort of grappling with SDR and what it means for our members. Oscar, maybe we can start with the broad question of what the FCA have tried to achieve with SDR.
Yeah, sure. And thanks again for having me, Sally. Looking forward to this conversation. I think fundamentally where the regulator's coming at this from is from the consumer protection perspective. So I think inherently there are links to the existing consumer duty that has been enforced across the industry for a bit of time now. And I think that is a difference really to the EU's SFDR, which policymakers in Brussels have said that's more around, I guess, reorientating capital towards the transition. So I think sometimes the different objectives between SDR and the EU SFDR are lost. But it's really important to remain focused on the respective objectives there. But it's really about consumer protection and enhancing that transparency, particularly for retail investors who we know have interest in the UK sustainable investing market, but just don't necessarily have that confidence at this point to invest with certainty.
As we've sort of alluded to in the title of this session, there are 4 labels. Can you sort of outline the 4 for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you say, there are 4 sustainability labels that are at the core of the SDR regime. There's a sustainability focus label. So that's really aiming to capture those funds that are investing in assets that are already considered sustainable today. There's then the sustainability improvers label. That's really focused more on funds that are investing in things, in assets that might not be sustainable today, but have that kind of aspiration to be greener and or more sustainable over time. And that kind of really captures transition related investments, which the EU SFDR doesn't have and has often been criticised for not having. Otherwise, we've got the sustainability impacts label as well under SDR. And that's really geared towards funds that want to invest in assets that have a specific, measurable and positive impact on the natural environment or society. The 4th one is sustainability mixed goals. That was added in the policy statement at quite a late stage and surprised ourselves actually in the team and a number of other industry groups as well. And the mixed goals is basically for funds that might want to invest in a combination of focus, improvers, and impact. And there's quite stringent disclosure obligations to actually say to what extent you're investing across those 3 other categories. I guess there's also, separate to the 4 sustainability labels, somewhat calling a kind of a 5th category as well. And that's really kind of unlabeled funds, but with some sustainability characteristics. And I think our expectation of others is that I think a lot of funds in the market might ultimately fall here. So, you're not hitting that kind of high bar that's set by the 4 sustainability labels, but you do have some sustainability characteristics and profile embedded within your investment processes. So it's that kind of unlabeled, but with some sustainability category that's also worth reflecting on, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks, Oscar. That's really helpful. So as we know, the sort of original guidance and the original policy paper came out just over a year ago. It's been a long year so far. What have the difficulties been?
Good question. It's a big question. Lots of challenges, I think, to note with the SDR. That's a fairly obvious point, I think. But I guess before going into the challenges, I think it's probably worth reflecting on a couple of things. One, that the SDR is a fairly principles-based regime, and the FCA have been quite clear about that. It's very much has the emphasis on disclosure. So I think with that kind of more principles-based, market-driven approach, that has left more room for interpretation in many of the SDR labeling requirements. And I think there's a question of interpretation between what the FCA deems as acceptable, but also what the industry deems as acceptable. But actually, if you kind of go within the industry as well, oftentimes I feel different firms or similar firms across the market will have a different perception of the rules and interpretation of what it really means. And then even within some individual firms as well, people can have very different perspectives there. And I think inherently you're going to get that to my mind, with a more principles-based framework compared to the prescription of, say, the EU SFDR. So yeah, in my view, some of these difficulties were going to be inevitable because of the principles-based nature of all this. I think also another point I wanted to make is around, this is a new regime. It's, the first regime of its kind operating globally that's combining that approach to disclosures, but also fund labeling. So yeah, it is new. It's going to take time for the regulator, for groups like UKSIF, and for our members to get used to it. And because so much of the stuff is new, not just the SDR, but other sustainability regulations, it does often feel we're still at the kind of beginning of the journey in many respects when we're looking at these regulations, despite having worked on these topics for a number of years now. So yeah, I think those are just a couple of points worth reflecting on for now. I guess in terms of your question, Sally, in terms of the difficulties facing our members, naturally, I think a lot of these have related to the requirements in terms of actually getting this is one of the 4 sustainability labels. So I think the qualifying criteria have proved fairly challenging. It's fair to say. So that's in terms of the cross-cutting criteria, I think. So there's a kind of general criteria that any sustainable fund is looking to meet to get that label. But then there's also the kind of criteria that's, I guess, more category specific. So if you want to qualify for the one labels, it's much more specific to those 4 categories. In terms of, I guess, the cross-cutting criteria to begin with, you've got requirements around having a non-financial objective. And then I guess that's underpinned by the sustainability standards. That has to be credible, and also sustainability related KPIs. And I think from speaking to members, there's often been lots of question marks around kind of what does good look like here around some of these cross-cutting requirements under SDR. And maybe a sense from FC that their expectations are more prescriptive actually than the principles in this based nature of the regime had intended, and that's led, I think, in some instances to much lengthier fund disclosures when firms are going for one of the 4 sustainability labels. So yeah, I think that's been a real challenge. Some of those kind of criteria that I've mentioned there. But I think equally also lots of questions, Sally, around issues relating to each of the categories as well.
Yeah.
In my view, I still think lots of questions around improvers, to be honest. Like, what do you do as an improving fund once you reach that transition potential? What happens there? Do you basically have to kind of sell off the underlying assets in that improvers fund and start the process again? Is that permitted, or do you kind of graduate to a kind of another label, so to say, in the regime? So a lot of questions there, but equally there were questions on some of the other categories as well. So on the focus, I think there were some questions maybe a few months ago around, can broader based sustainability funds, what's the place for them in the focus category? And maybe it's kind of easier for a narrower thematic based sustainability funds per se to qualify for focus. So yeah, there might still be some kind of questions there, but I know that came up in a lot of engagement that we had with the regulator and our members a few months ago. Yeah, I guess separately to the qualifying criteria for the labels, naming marketing has been a real challenge. So yeah, those are pretty strict in terms of what you can say in both the kind of the fund name, but also the marketing in regards to sustainability. And I think the FCA recognized some of the challenges there. And I think with input from us and other groups, they actually announced a temporary relief period for certain funds that had to qualify with the naming and marketing rules. So yeah, it was really good to see the FCA recognize the challenges there. But yeah, there's loads more we could talk about. There's the anti-greenwashing rule as well that caused some issues when that first came up. But yeah, we'll kind of leave it there as some of the main difficulties I think that we've noted.
That's really helpful, and sort of taking those difficulties into account. What's the current state of play? We're at the end of the year. Are funds getting labels?
Yeah, thanks. So I guess, yeah, we're having this conversation towards the end of November, and things are moving so quickly. But I guess, as of this point in time, I guess the end of November, sitting with you, Sally, yeah, more funds are getting labels. So, before this call, I saw that Standard Life got a number of labels, I believe, for the improvers category. And I think they're the first UK pension provider to get a sustainability label under SDR. I think other firms have also started to declare as well. I think Columbia Threadneedle had the big news of getting 9 labels. So yeah, I think things are starting to move. This is really, really positive. And I think also there might be a case of other funds that have yet to declare that they've got a label, but I guess want to sort of wait and see and take advantage of that kind of that first mover advantage, so to say. So yeah, I'd expect there are kind of more firms that will still look to declare in the coming days and weeks, and hopefully by the time that this podcast is out and it's the end of the year and everyone's enjoying Christmas, we'll have lots and lots more label funds in the market. That's definitely my hope. I guess yeah, we'll have to kind of see what happens going forwards. But I think yeah, I'm fairly optimistic that yeah, we will start to see more labels in the market, and some of these issues that I kind of discussed with you just now, Sally, will start to ease as familiarity grows within the industry on these requirements. And I think, as the picture starts to improve, in our view, it's really important that can then help remake the case for the SDR influencing other regimes across the world. So, getting that international comparability and interoperability is really important for a lot of our members. So yeah, I think the more we see these kind of labeled funds, the more we see successes with SDR, that always will hopefully make the case once again for other regimes like the SFTR to draw on the SDR.
Was that progress immediate? Did funds start achieving labels immediately, or why are they being achieved now when they weren't earlier?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess to my point just now, I think part of it is just to do with the fact that this is a new regime.
Yeah.
There's been a lot for firms to grapple with, and I think we identified that in our report that we did with PwC in May this year. I think that noted a lot of these kind of initial challenges that firms had to face, and that included needing to set up new internal governance processes to comply with these requirements. So yeah, there's definitely been that kind of learning curve for asset managers that we work with, but equally also a learning curve for groups like us and for the FCA as well. And I think the FCA have reflected on that, and to their credit, I think they have done some work to perhaps behind the scenes to clarify their expectations to groups like us and to our members as well. So I think yeah, on all sides, I think everyone is starting to kind of come to grips with the regime, make the kind of necessary changes, and I think hopefully we will kind of start to get there. I think also there's the kind of role of advisors as well and lawyers. I think they're probably starting to get to grips with this more and more as well. And yeah, perhaps the role of the FCA's guidance that we push quite strongly for has played a role as well. So yeah, that's the kind of best practice guidance that came out a few weeks ago.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know we are coming towards the end of our time, but perhaps we can finish with a sort of look ahead. What is your hope for the future when it comes to SDR?
Great. So yeah, as I said, I'm fairly optimistic, and hopefully I could say, very optimistic as we come to the end of the year and we see more labeled funds getting approval from the regulator. Yeah, I think I'd say yeah, we'll start to see more labeled funds in the market, but equally I would say there probably will be more challenges as well. So yeah, now I guess it's not the time to be complacent. I think yeah, to my mind, there's still will be some implementation challenges, I think, around some of those kind of longer term requirements that maybe managers haven't kind of focused on, and others at this point in time. So I'm thinking of the kind of product level disclosures that a fund will need to produce, I think, within one year of getting the fund label. And then there's the kind of broader entity level disclosures as well. And I think because of the lack of standardization for the product level disclosures and entity level disclosures as well, I think that will mean the industry will need to come together and come up with some more consistent common approaches there. Otherwise, we might get kind of very different approaches to implementation there, and confusion potentially for investors at the end of the day. I think naming marketing, that might rear its head again as well. There's that temporary flexibility period that I mentioned earlier. That's only for certain funds they're able to qualify, and I think that that deadline expires, I believe, in April of next year. So yeah, we might see some issues around complying with that deadline then in 2025. The anti-greenwashing rule as well. I mean, that's something that firms need to look at on an ongoing basis. So, and we might see the regulator look to set out its expectations on how our members and others are actually, complying with the requirements under the anti-greenwashing rule there. So, yeah, there are definitely a few challenges to note there on the horizon. But yeah, it definitely feels like as we end 2024, it seems like yeah, we're certainly ending on a far more positive note than many I think in the industry had expected. And I guess yeah, looking into next year, maybe sort of one of the final things to say is it'll be interesting to see how SDR evolves. Our expectation is that it will eventually be extended to overseas funds, pension products, and portfolio management services as well. So yeah, there's some other things to keep an eye out on into next year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Oscar. That's been incredibly helpful. And thank you everyone for joining us on the fourth day of UKSIF-mas. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow for day 5. Remember to like and subscribe to be the first to hear our episodes, and I'll see you tomorrow.
That's great. Thanks, Sally.